Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining from, and welcome to Just SeaCurity Dialogues, Voices from the Coast, Emerging Research in Ocean Governance. Oceans governance in Africa and at the global levels faces unprecedented challenges at the intersection of traditional security concerns, environmental sustainability, and technological transformations. As coastal communications navigate rapidly evolving economic pressures, regulatory frameworks, and global market dynamics, researchers across disciplines on the African continent and elsewhere are generating critical insight into how these challenges reshape maritime spaces and the lives of those who depend on them, calling for a justice facing framework of understanding all these changes. This section or today's seminar examines how industrial development in fisheries and technological innovations are reshaping governance or governance frameworks and transforming coastal realities, offering critical insights into challenges and opportunities for achieving sustainable oceans governance. Following the established format of the Just SeaCurity Dialogues from those that have attended previously, you would know that we sort of try to focus on peer feedback before inviting questions from participants. The session will feature two research presentations from Mustafa from the Gambia and Elsie from Ghana. They will introduce themselves once they start their presentation. Each presenters will offer a critical reflection on the other's research, fostering reciprocal engagement that enriches both presentations while demonstrating the interconnected nature of oceans governance challenges across different domains. And then we're going to open the floor up for questions. Without further ado, I would like to then invite Mr. Mustafa Mane to first of all introduce himself and then give a presentation on the political economy of fish meal and fish oil industry in West Africa, trade-offs between export markets and local food security. Mustafa, you have the floor now.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for that brilliant introduction. So my name is Mustafa Mane. I am from the Gambia. I'm an investigative journalist and a researcher. I work with, a lot of NGOs, but I once worked as a visitor researcher at Lancaster University in the UK. But currently I serve as an ozone leader at Edinburgh University in the UK. So nice to have you all here. Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Good. So my topic is going to be actually based on fish meal and fish oil production in West Africa. So to give you a bit about fish meal actually started because they believe that they don't actually want to have a waste of fish. So that's the whole idea behind fish meal, to start using every single part of fish. But unfortunately, this thing turned to be another thing. So the overview is the rapid expansion of fish meal and fish oil production in West Africa. So currently the data that we have that was in 2019 shows that Mauritania have like 40 fish meal factories and Senegal have 7 and the Gambia have 3. That makes it 50. But this data keep changing. Accessing data when it comes to fish meal becomes also a big challenge. So the driving by the global demand and availability of small stock. So we are also going to talk about the demand, which have to do with Scotland, Oslo, Norway, trying to push more of agriculture, and also FAO claiming that fish meal or aquaculture is sustainable. So the local perspective when it comes to that. But also the major operations in the Gambia, Senegal, and Mauritania is something that I'm going to talk to. So if you look at the species when it comes to these and is highly the species of Sardinella, Bonga, and other oily fish like grunt. The global demand for agriculture and also lively livestock feed. But in the Gambia, the most of the case is actually agriculture. Migrant fish are supplying factories at a higher prices. If you look at the Senegal and the Gambia, these are countries that are very, very well connected. And the fishing in the Gambia is mostly dominated by the Senegalese, because in the Gambia, and Senegal, fishing is associated to a tribe, and most of the tribe are originally from Senegal. So that gave it, this migrant fishers more opportunity to supply the fish meal company to fish. So I will also look at the competition for the raw fish. So right now there is a scarcity of fish. Data have shown that Sardinella and Bonga have been overexploited. These data cannot lie, even though there have been a lack of political will for both governments. If you look at the Gambia, for example, the government hardly talk about fish meal. As an investigative journalist, the moment you talk about fish meal, the government will try to turn their back because they don't want you to talk about fish meal. But fish meal have been a huge issue. And the same thing in Senegal. If you go to Senegal and you're doing a research on fish meal and you approach a government officer and you talk about fish meal, they tend to avoid the topic because they see it as a very critical, and a very sensitive topic because people's livelihood have been completely affected. So the edible fish have been completely diverted to the fish meal factories. So in most of the cases, Sardinella and Bonga are not just only affordable or eatable, but these are fish that are so connected to our cultural identity. These fish are the most affordable fish, are the most available fish. And because they are also rich with omega-3, which is also associated with communities like where I come from. We said these communities have one of the most smartest people. It's not actually because we are lucky to, the whole idea is because we are lucky to have access to this kind of fish because we are close to the ocean. But now that becomes a challenge. The affordability becomes a challenge, the availability becomes and now people have to move to a frozen chicken where we don't even know, where they come from. So that reuse and availability in the market also become an issue. So since the fish meal factory started coming, in a rapid, for example, Senegal and the Gambia, you started seeing more fish meal coming. The Gambia actually started recently. That was in 2015, and the first idea was Gambia is a country that doesn't even know how fish meal is all about, where it comes from. So the whole idea was, okay, we are coming here to create unemployment because the fish meal owners understand African politics a lot, and they understand that Africa has a lot of issue when it comes to unemployment. So the first idea is, okay, we are going to sell our idea that, okay, we're going to create job employment. And when it comes to Gambia and said, we're going to create job employment, everybody was jumping because this is an opportunity for our youth not to stay on the street, for our youth not to engage in illegal stuff, but for our youth to be a meaningful use in the society. And everybody embraced it. And secondly, they said, okay, we are going to do a sardinella instead of, we are going to do sardine, like canned sardine instead of fish meal. And the people actually embraced the whole idea again. We are going to contribute to community developments. We are going to build roads. We are going to connect the community. We are going to build, and contribute to every single aspect of community development. Those are promises that were given to the community because first they understand that Africa has, especially Gambia and Senegal, has what we call, the gap between the old and the young. So when that elder person said, yes, I cannot say no. I am 30, I'm 34 years old, but I'm still considered a kid in my community. So if my uncle said yes, I dare not say no because it's an abomination for me to say no because that is the culture that we have, and that's the tradition that we have. So these investors understand this a lot because they work with their local partners who actually master our cultural dynamic. So now you see when they said yes, it's become a problem for us to say no as Africans. So that also contributes to this mess that we have it. So that's why we have these massive companies coming on and agreements where we're actually verbal agreement without any written agreement, and that becomes a problem to actually sue them. So threatening for food security, there's a huge threat for food security in actually West Africa, especially Gambia and Senegal and Mauritania. A lot of people I was in Mauritania for an investigation and research. Most of them will say, okay, we don't eat sardinella a lot. We actually depend on meat. But that is not the case. It's not about Mauritania. It's about the coast because this is a sea stock. So if Mauritania is overexploited, overexploiting of this sardinella, then Gambia is going to be affected. So if Gambia is doing this, then Mauritania is going to be affected. So that's why there is a need for more of a co-management, and the co-management is the only way that we can sustain these resources. So Senegal is facing the same thing. Gambia is facing the same thing. Today, if you go to the Gambian market to have access to fish, it becomes a problem. To have access to this kind of fish that have been one of the most accessible and one of the most affordable become a huge problem. So those scarcity of fish in the market has, not only threatened our food security, but has also threatened our, our national health crisis, because people are eating frozen chicken where we don't even know where they're coming from. These chicken are usually, chickens that are being in containers for months. And when there is, an issue with storage facilities, these chickens can actually be be contaminated. We talk about over exploitation of a small sardinella, some or small pelagics. So small pelagics have been the main center issue when it comes to fish meal and fish oil. So bonga and sardinella have been the fish that the fishermen have been using. So, for example, the Gambia, the government hasn't have any data when it comes to fish meal, so they just allow them to operate. But as a researcher and also as someone who live within this community, we had a lot of engagements with the fish meal owners, even though at the starting they don't want to talk to anyone. But last time when I was at the fish meal factory in Sanya with some university students, the owner said they process like daily 600 tons of fish. Imagine we have 3 fish meal factories in the Gambia with a Gambian coastline of only 80 kilometers, and you have you're talking about more than 1,500 tons of this small pelagics being processed every day. That shows that there is an over exploitation of these small projects. And yes, because the government doesn't have any data, but you're still allowing fish meal to operate. So the unsustainable fishing pressure has caused a lot in our marine space. And also the risk of stock depletion. The stocks are already been depleted, because it's not only about the avoided the accessibility, but also it's about the maturity, because most of these fish, when I was a kid growing up, we call bonga kombotura. So kombotura is a local language. It means the coastal bull, because it's as bull as it's as big as you can imagine. So we call it a combo bull. But now that is not the case now. These stocks have been completely depleted and the size have drastically reduced. So meaning if the fish doesn't have enough time to breathe in the water. And also the impact on ecological, balance and livelihood. People livelihood have been affected. So Gambia, Senegal, and Mauritania, if you go to the coastal communities, these are people that may not have ability to farm, or either their farmlands have been taken away from them by the government to do mining. So all what they depend later on is actually on the small pelagics. So now if these small pelagics have been, overexploited, their livelihood become also affected. It's not only that, but even tourism industry. For example, Gambia and Senegal, we have what we call ecotourism. So this ecotourism plays a vital role in our, daily sustenance. So if you look at the Gambia and Senegal, for example, fish mills are built on the coast. So in the Gambia, the government says, or the law actually says that that is the Tourism Development Act says that there should be no activity that is not related to tourism built within 800 meters away from the sea. So I cannot build a house to live in as a resident within 800 meters away from the sea. But fish meal factories can come and build less than 100 meters away from the sea. So that shows that there is also an inconsistency between, these different ministries. And this inconsistency is actually been deliberately portrayed by the government because they want to protect only few people. And to add on that, I keep saying this is going to take as long as China is involved. I am not anti-China actually, but the reality is if this is done by another African country or another African investor, by now they will have closed them. But because now they cannot close them because they become toothless. They become toothless because we have most of these Western countries, again, most of these Asian countries like China, a political debt. And that political debt is what actually lead us to allow them to exploit our marine resources like the way they are doing when it comes to fish meal. So so now you have the environment here, the environmental and the social externalities. So if you look at it, like I said, this is not only built on the coast, but it's built around where people live. It's built around where tourisms are centered, especially when it comes to ecotourism. So now we talk about the pollution here. People I remember for a few years ago when this fish mill started operating, kids will be running, covering their nose, calling poo, 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 because they cannot imagine that there is something that smells and that is even worse than they can ever imagine. So the air pollution becomes so toxic that the government have to ask the companies to take all their waste to a waste treatment center in the Gambia here. But that waste treatment center area is where you have the big men, I mean, the government officials. Within 1 week, the government officials asked them to stop dumping their waste there. And that is when they asked them to start dumping their untreated waste into the Atlantic Ocean. Untreated waste into the Atlantic Ocean. And that have caused, again, water pollution. So as a tourism area, people are scared now to swim in the water because it gives you skin rashes. That water, that same water, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, used to treat our skin rashes. As a kid, if you have a skin rashes, your mom or your dad will ask you to go to the sea and take shower because we believe that the water, because it has salt, is going to kill your rashes. But that same water now is giving you rashes. And that never happened until the coming of fish meal factory and until when the fish meal factory started discharging their wastewater, untreated wastewater in the Atlantic Ocean. But we are not only saying that, but we are also seeing an excessive.
Mustafa, I think you're muted somehow. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry. It's gone now? I don't know what happened.
much better. Yeah, all good.
Thank you so much. So I said, like, if you look at this, because it's actually not about, conflict. It's not about fish. It's about people living. Their livelihood have been muted.
Yeah, your voice went off again, but I think it's back.
Okay.
Can you try? Yeah, we can hear
It's
you
fine.
now.
Okay, thank you so much. So like you can see also a loss of income for the women. So what happened is few years ago, the fish meal company want to expand. So when they want to expand, they have to ask the women to actually leave where they work because they want to use that place. So that becomes a terrible news in the government. The government have to even say they are not aware of what is happening. And these companies actually have caused the women to lose their work because their gardens have been taken away from them to build these fish meal factories. Their local fish processing centers where they dry their fish, where they clean their fish, have been taken away from them to build these fish meal factories. You can see the picture on my slide. That is the fish meal factory that you can see. And that is just the Atlantic Ocean. You can see how close it is. And behind it, you can see the swami area. That is where people grow their rices. But now they cannot grow their rice, they cannot grow their vegetable because there have been a new invention of what we call insects. These insects have never been in this area until the coming of a fish meal factory. So that's why they cannot do anything. And so meaning their livelihood have been lost and they cannot process their fish anymore because they are competing to access fish with the fish meal factory that has a bigger, capacity and also a bigger money. So decline also in small scale like fisheries livelihood. Small scale fishers are not going into fishing anymore. And that's why, again, you have seen a high increase in vessels, or I would call them peruques, coming all the way from the Gambia to the Canary Islands. So what happened is most of these vessels are vessels that are used for fishing. But because now there is less fish in the water, they are competing with a bigger vessel all the way from Senegal just to fish for the fish meal factory. There have been a scarcity of sardinella and bonga that they have been fishing for so long. Now they have turned their fishing vessels into human smuggling vessels. While doing one of the investigation, I spoke with a human smuggler who has a boat, and he told me, Mustafa, you know what? One trip, the amount of money that I make is far more than the amount of money that I make in the whole life of fishing. Because if the boat can take like 20 people and one person paid about 400 or about, $500, one person, and we're talking about 200 people, that's a huge money for them. So they don't care risking their life using this small unfit boat for this long journey just to make sure because their livelihood have been affected by the people that's supposed to actually protect it. Okay, let me move the slides. Okay. Sorry. Why is it? I cannot. My slides is misbehaving.
Okay, should I share from my side? I see you have some
Okay,
two or three
it's
more.
here now. Thank
Okay.
you. No. Okay. Can you share from yours, please? Because it's like my slide is misbehaving. Let me stop
All
sharing. You
right.
share for me.
I'll do that. But you have just 5 minutes left on the
Yes,
clock.
I'm
Okay.
almost done. Thank you.
All right. Is this a point? Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, let's go.
Let it go. All right, good. So when it comes to regulation, we have a huge gap. And this is not the issue only in the Gambia and Senegal. This is an issue in Gambia, Senegal, and Mauritania when it comes to fish meal. The reason why I'm mentioning Gambia, Mauritania, and Senegal are the countries that currently have a fish meal factories. Yes, countries like Sierra Leone are on the verge of having a fish meal factory, but the local community are actually fighting back because they are learning actually from the Gambia. So we have weak enforcement of fisheries laws. In the Gambia, sadly, fisheries officers that's supposed to be there to protect the Fisheries Act are the very people that are supporting the fish meal factories because they have incentive from the fish meal factory that is far more than the amount of money that they are having from the government salary. So that makes them to tend to support fish meal factory than the government. You also because these are foreign investors. And when it comes to licensing practices, Gambia is a country that have what we call a flag of convenience. It's not only flag of convenience, but we have like conflict of interest when it comes to issuing licenses because the same consultant are the same very people that are working for the government, like the Gambia government. So it becomes a problem being a consultant, also being a government official. You know, like environmental oversight issues. Like every company that's supposed to establish in the Gambia is supposed to go to what we call environmental and social impact assessment. But this social and environmental impact assessment have not been the case in the Gambia because when you're doing that, you need to involve the local people. And all these fish meal factories, there is no local person that will say, I'm involved when they are doing this impact assessment. Can you move to the next slide, please? Can you move to the next, please?
I'm
Okay,
on
thank you.
governance reform needs. Can you see that?
Yes, I can see it now. So there is a need for government reform. There should be a greater transparency in fish meal and the fish oil sector. There should be community participation in decision making. There should be a stronger regulation and environmental protection. This is very key. If we want to have like an environment that is going to be here today and tomorrow, then there must be a greater transparency. And fish meal doesn't have any transparency because there are only few people that are actually enjoying it, while the community have been left out of this whole process. And there is a lot of irregularities when it comes to how the fish meal comes in and how much amount of fish stock that they are processing every day. Next stage, please. Okay, we are next stage.
I'm on the conclusion slide. I think it takes a while for you to see when I skip move to the next slide. Can you see the conclusion?
Yes, now I can see. Thank you so much. So my conclusion is that fish meal and fish oil offer economic benefit. That is right because yes, they do because they pay a little tax to the government, a little tax that is actually like the risk actually overweight more than the amount that they're giving to the government because there's a risk of food security and there's also a risk for our ecosystem to collapse. But there are like the need for sustainable marine management that need to be done in the Gambia and Senegal and Mauritania. We need to have what we call a regional collaboration to make sure we tackle this very serious and a very serious and a treble issue when it comes to our fish. We need to prioritize human food supply and community well-being than what they are doing, killing fish to feed another fish. To me, it's not like because it's not illegal, but morally and ethically it's wrong. So our moral consent need to be there, and the Gambia government and West African government need to understand that people should be prioritized first. It doesn't make sense to kill a fish to feed another fish. And most of the time, these fish they don't feed us. They feed the Western countries that have a bigger opportunity than us. Thank you so much. I think that's my presentation, and thank you so much for your kind listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It has really been amazing listening to you, the compelling evidence that you've provided. But at the same time, I'm happy that I don't have to give any feedback. And so I'm handing it over to Elsie to provide her feedback, to introduce herself and then provide her comment. Thank you so much, Mr.
Well, thank you. And thank you very much, Mustafa. And first of all, thank you to the organizers, Dr. Ife Sinachi Okafu Yawud, and also Stephanie Osewa Shandov. My name is Elsie Emilia Techment, and my background is basically sustainable studies and environmental issues, and I have focused on maritime security issues and cybersecurity issues for the past decade now. At the moment, I'm the team leader at the UNITA Safe Seas project, which is for the MMCCs and MOCs under the Yaoundé Code of Conduct in West Africa. Again, thank you for this honorable invitation to speak on here. Mustafa, this was a brilliant presentation, quite passionate also, and I totally understand that because you are an indigene of Gambia. And I like that the presentation highlights the rapid expansion of, fish meal and fish oil production in Gambia, in Senegal, and also in West Africa. And that is driven by the global aquaculture demand for small pelagics like the sardinella and the bonga shad that you mentioned. In terms of your methodological presentation, I think observing the trends and the overexploitation and pollution of the air, the water, as you mentioned, and also the waste discharges from the FMFO factories provided a more, rigorous understanding and synthesis through integrating the data that you have on the stock rates as well as the catch per unit effort. I will leave some of the things to the Q&A session, which probably will come after, or definitely will come after my presentation. But what I'd like to mention in terms of my reflections following what I've just shared is questions that can help you to tease out some other issues, which maybe will be helpful for you in terms of forward-facing imperatives. And I know you spoke about the issue of women, the spaces of fish processors being taken from them by these factories. And I wonder if it would be a good idea to you to have a breakdown of how it affects various demographics in the communities, right? So if you look at women, how does it affect women? Because you also spoke about how it affects people in the community who are adults, but they are not necessarily, adults because of some socioeconomic factors such as level of income. You can be a child just by virtue of what you earn. Meanwhile, you are aged 40 or 50. And so you could try to tease out the issues that affects different levels of people in the community. Also, in terms of the licensing regime, I know you talked about the fact that it's quite loose and not so firm. People building 800 meters, supposed to build not more than 800 meters away from the shore. But what are the issues? If you're looking into the licensing regime, is it that people are given licenses that are, fake? Or they are given real licenses and the regulatory eyes are not clear and, surveilling well enough. And so this takes me on to the surveillance technologies that could be useful. You mentioned in your governance reform needs the community participation. Will that be enough for keeping an eye on, the tourism side and other alien, should I say, which is outside stimuli that come into the society, the community to take over their space and their resources? Or could it be a better a way to look on a national level, or on a regional level, right? Maybe you can tease these out and then give specific entities a specific role. So in your conclusion and in your recommendation, if you say transparency, stronger regulation, more community participation, you want to assign it to somebody and say the government must invest in transparency in the licensing regime, and by implementing, these measures or using these security strategies. So far, I won't go on too much. I know there's a bit of time. I will also make my presentation short, and then the Q&A session could be a bit exhaustive. So I will leave it here for now. But thank you very much again for such a compelling and brilliant presentation. Does it mean I continue with mine?
Yes, please. Now that you've introduced yourself, you can go ahead and introduce your topic and then start your presentation. Thank you.
Fantastic. As I mentioned, I prefer to have the group see my slides. I hope I'm doing the right thing. We go through it, and then if we have a lot more time for discussion, I'm much happier about that. So again, my name is Elsie Emilia Techimet. No, this is not my presentation. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop sharing now.
We're not seeing it yet anyways. We haven't seen what you were sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a blank screen
Yeah.
initially.
Okay. Can you
Yeah.
see now?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. So I'm speaking. Please give me a quick second. Okay, this should be good. Okay, please confirm you can see my screen.
We can.
Fantastic. Well, I'm speaking on the topic charting Africa's maritime future by integrating security technology and regional cooperation. And it's basically looking into, turning the vulnerabilities of the West African coastline into prosperity, literally. And so we're unpacking the threats, the innovations, the collaborations, and the gaps that abide, and the actionable paths forward. So we dive in. Now, Africa has 38 coastal states, and I'm going to focus on West Africa, and the scope covers the threats, which has the cutting edge security technologies. And West African Regional Cooperation has definitely proven success stories, but has the persistent gaps and also untapped opportunities. And the emerging threats that persist despite the progress, we have the IUU fishing, we have illicit flows of humans, persons, drugs, and anything that can go across. So recently we've seen gold, we've seen more small arms and light weapons. We've also seen some cash crops that are legal, but are being transmitted or transported illegally. There are also the environmental crimes, such as pollution, which Mustafa also mentioned in his presentation. We're also facing similar problems in Ghana and other West African states. And these threats have terrorism linkages into the Sahel and other parts of the continent. There are also cyber attacks on maritime infrastructure that are used for surveilling at the ports and also for the coastal communities. The cyber threats are surging, and there is ransomware that cripples ports and also phishing attacks that affect supply chains, vessel hacks, and they attack the navigation systems and also the surveillance systems that exist. Nigeria has had its own ports shut down in 2024, and it cost about $50 million daily for them to revive it before it got better and workable. The Ghana Tema Harbor itself also remains vulnerable. And these are non-kinetic attacks, and they simply amplify the physical risks, and they go on to blur the governance systems that exist to address them. So these cyber threats literally on the screen are what we have faced mostly in Africa, West Africa, and also in South Africa with the EC, the Transnet, and then also the SA digital systems. Now, if we look at the innovations in security technologies that already exist, we have the unmanned vehicles, which have various types, which is the unmanned aerial vehicles, the drones that we know of. There are also the remotely operated vehicles, which can be submersible. There's also the unmanned surface vehicles, which are more like boats, but also remotely or totally autonomous vehicles that operate on their own, and others that you can see on the screen. And these have proven useful in other parts of the world. And for the USV, specifically in South Africa, which is being introduced. But one thing to note is that these technologies, while important, they also come with limitations and challenges in terms of the legal infrastructure that is supposed to integrate them into the system, as well as protecting them and the ports and areas, geographical locations that they protect. Now, moving on to less of tech and more of the regional cooperation itself. As you can see on the screen, we have various instruments and various entities who are dedicated to providing regional cooperation between regional states and in turn, the entire continent with its various states. So we have the Yaoundé Code of Conduct, as I mentioned earlier, and also we have the multinational maritime coordination centers, which are over the continent with the Zone E, Zone F, Zone G, Zone A, which doesn't have a situation physically yet, but they have been very instrumental in working with various countries in the zones that they exist to provide regional cooperation among states in Africa. There are also joint operations like the Bangami Export.
We're no longer seeing your slide, or is it just me? But I guess
That is
that's
very
okay.
strange.
Okay.
Do other people see it, please?
I can see the regional cooperation slide.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, then
I
it's
can
me.
see it.
It's me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. Next is the ICC, which is located in Cameroon and very instrumental in supporting with, again, regional cooperation in West Africa and also Central Africa. And we have the MOCs, which also have worked in collaboration with regional partners and also countries working with extra-regional partners for regional cooperation and also continental cooperation in the end. Now, these are some of the successful collaborations that we have had. We've had the enhanced MDA or the maritime domain awareness. And always we give a round of applause to the Falcon Eye from Nigeria, which has done a very exemplary job in the collaboration in the maritime sector. There's also been capacity building and trainings, which have been delivered by various centers of excellence and various projects that have been executed in the region and on the continent. Now, the gaps and challenges, I mentioned a few on the integration of technology, but just to go into detail, these are the others that we can take into account. And the capacities of various African states, we can all agree that are different. We are all resource different. And when I say we, I mean we as Africans, as African states, we don't have the same capacities, we don't have the same resources. And so we don't expect to do the same things at the same times. And this creates lopsidedness and sometimes some lags because we can expect that, some things be done and some countries or some states can do it earlier than others. And I'm sorry about that. This creates disparities in events. And just to mention briefly, what we try to do on the Safe Seas project is try to give the training and capacity after we've assessed on a very par level so that we don't again, have these disparities and unevenness in terms of the capacity given to the various countries and the various agencies in the countries. Also, the issue of integration of data. Integrating data has to take into cognizance the data instruments that are available in that country and region, and also the maritime instrument. And so having, that cyber maritime integration of data across agencies, across various countries and regions with different priorities, different interests, it can be quite challenging. And this is one of the gaps that exists. The next one speaks very closely to what I've just spoken about. So the legal frameworks that abide closely with these instruments and provisions affect the prosecutorial effectiveness and processes as well. There's also limited development of blue economy and coastal community engagement. And so if you look at Mustafa's presentation and another similar presentation from Ghana, you find similarities, but you definitely also find different stories from both sides. And so if you ever find that one of these stories, if it's Gambia and let's say Ghana has a much more developed blue economy than the other, then that's a challenge because you can't give them the same mandate, you can't give them the same expectation and outcomes, even if you give them the same resources and capacity. The last one, it goes without saying, back to the very first point, funding and eventually sustainability of the initiatives in regions, not just regions, but the states on the state level as well, are not all the same. And I think there is always the song, which is a chorus that is sung that funding, we need a lot of funding. And this is a reality on the ground and a challenge to effecting regional cooperation, but also integration of digital technology. And the last one, which we can all attest to, is the evolving threat landscape and then the digital resilience deficiencies. Every country in Africa has its own specific digital integration and levels of digital integration. There's a word I'm looking for, but the use of digital technologies in the various countries differ. And so the threats differ, and also the ways of addressing those threats also differ. So the resilience you find in one region on the continent is not the same as the other. But alas, there are definitely opportunities, and I have listed a few on the screen. Looking into information sharing and trust building, which is being perpetrated by the MMCCs, the MOCs, various agencies, and there are still some overlaps and gaps when it comes to information sharing, but with time and with the conversation continuously being had and without seams, this is constantly being improved. And so I will still keep it here as an opportunity, but there is still more room for improvement. Strategic investment in dual use and indigenous technology solutions, I believe, is quite important. And this is one of the projects that my colleague Josephine and I are doing a paper on, which takes into account the issues of ownership and the contributions of the coastal communities in building digital technologies. And yes, it's digital, but it also has to fuse into the people who are directly affected by the issues of the sea's lives. And so taking into account the indigenous knowledge and using them to be a good foundation for building strategic and innovative technological solutions which are digital is very important, and it's a great opportunity to not miss the mark and build technologies that hit their target and are impactful. The third, as I've mentioned in the challenges, comes here as an opportunity, and that's the opportunity for us to strengthen the legal, judicial, and correctional and prosecutorial capacities. Also promoting a sustainable blue economy and coastal livelihoods. Also, governments and also civil society specifically, as well as the coastal communities themselves, should be able to diversify funds and on the other hand, for regional bodies to enhance regional ownership. And I would add that community ownership of technologies as well as initiatives. The last one, which speaks to the cyber resilience bit, is to have more proactive cyber resilience and workforce deployment in terms of meeting or combating or addressing the challenges that I mentioned earlier. And so these are the strategic forward-facing imperatives that I think can be integrated into the opportunities that I mentioned. So integrated maritime governance and policy cohesion, targeted investment in smart maritime security technologies, strengthen justice and accountability chains, empowering the blue economy and coastal resilience, fostering a culture of cyber vigilance and resilience, sustaining regional collaboration through diversified funds. Whilst these look very much like the opportunities, the main idea is to continue to have the foundation of building strong digital innovations. However, with that other hand of regional cooperation, putting them together and not just thinking about regional cooperation in these terms, but also as the other hand holding it, which is the digital technology. So in conclusion, I like to have a call to action to close up my presentation decks. And I believe that the future of the blue economy and the security of these people depends on its collective will to act decisively. And in this case, it is working together with the idea of having innovative and impactful digital technologies to build and better our blue economy. So thank you very much to all. And I am open to discussing any comments, any questions, also to Mustafa's commentary on my presentation to make it better. Thank you again, and you can stay connected with me. Right. I will stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, thank you so much, Elsie, for that really great presentation. I like that it focused on digital technology, cybersecurity, and maritime, and how you try to align it with some of the issues that Mustafa raised, and obviously showing that we've seen challenges, solutions are also possible. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mustafa to provide a quick feedback, and then we will open the floor for questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That's a great and also a brilliant presentation. I don't have much to say. The only thing that I think I will add is that technology and regional collaborations are very, very central when it comes to this issue of discuss, and especially maritime security, which is like facing another challenge in Africa. But I'm glad that piracy is actually reducing. So this is important. So the other thing is actually that threats that has to do with IUU and also illicit trafficking. So the illicit trafficking, when it comes to humans, I don't understand that much. But again, I will wait until when there's a question and answers. But overall, this is a brilliant presentation, and thank you so much.
So much for that really great and sweet spot of we're giving a quick feedback. We're now going to open the floor to questions, and yeah, if you can keep your question very concise, and if it helps, introduce yourself and say who you're directing your question to. That would be great. Thank you so much. So you can either raise your hand or you type your question on the chat if you don't want to ask it live. Okay, whilst we're waiting for people, there's one here from Deacon Dr. Lloyd. Mustafa, I think is directed to you. You said two questions. What can the waste be used for as a fertilizer? And has the fisheries heads given any thought to forming a fishing corporation which involves all fishing communities and companies continent-wide? Do you have any response to that?
Yes, I do. So interestingly, right now there is limited tech or ideas when it comes to reusing this actual waste. Even though recently I heard that fish meal companies are taking this waste out of the Gambia, send it to China. This is something that I cannot confirm, but the government official once told me this is what they are doing to avoid, the pollution the Atlantic Ocean. But for now, there's no idea on the table how to use it locally here. Thank you.
In relation to the cooperation, I think I can say at least at the ECOWAS level, not necessarily specific to fish meal, the ECOWAS countries are now having conversations around how they can ensure equitable use of their fisheries resources. And some of the conversations they've been having this year has been around negotiating fishing agreement as a bloc. So, for example, rather than countries within ECOWAS going separately to license and negotiate fishing agreement with third or distant water countries, they are sort of trying to negotiate these agreements as an economic bloc and have a more collective response to things like illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing in the same way that we have been doing, or should I say, similar success that we have seen in relation to how Gulf of Guinea countries have come together to address piracy and Amambia Sea. But specific to forming cooperation, I have not read of anything, or I'm not aware of such conversation, but this might be something that is already happening, or something that definitely should be considered. Thank you. Any other question or comment from the audience? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay. Josephine, one question from
Yeah, I have a bit of a curiosity, Mustafa,
Okay.
regarding your slide on the competition for raw fish. I'm curious, how does it juxtapose against competition for processed fish? Is there any such? Because I've been
So
to Gambia once and I brought to Ghana, I know we are related. I brought a lot of kako, the salted stockfish from
I know.
Gambia to Ghana. So I'm curious to know about that as well.
Well, most of the kaku from Gambia goes to Ghana. We don't actually call it here kaku.
Okay.
We call it dry fish, and most of them actually because they are sold there and go to Ghana. But when it comes to the competition for the raw fish, I mean because the fish meal demand a huge number of a raw sardinella instead of rotten sardinella or the rest of fish. They demand a whole fish that is fit for human consumption. And the human
Mm.
beings also in the Gambia and Senegal, we are actually looking for the same fish. So they have been given the first priority because they actually contract those boats of fish for them. So if the vessel come to the shore, they actually give them fish first. So if they are up to the capacity, that's when they turn back to the local people. So that's why they say there is a competition for the raw fish.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
All right. And then there's a question from Josephine for Mustafa. She said, is there any information if these fish meal companies have any corporate social responsibilities toward local communities to remediate their impact on them?
Yes, there are, and these are just verbal commitments. Like I said, when they come, they always link with the elderly people, and most of these elderly people have not get the opportunity to go to school. So it's usually a verbal commitment. So their commitment can be more than that. For example, where I come from, Carton, the fish meal company was giving they were giving 350,000 Gambian dollars every 3 months, which is probably around 5,000 US dollars every 3 months. And this is a company that said to me that they process daily, the amount of money that they spend for their daily production goes up to 1 million Gambian dollars. That's about 20,000 Gambian dollars. So, and they are giving only 5,000 as a corporate sort of something, and that is only my community. So Gunjur community, they were giving 40,000 every month. 40,000 every month is about 800 it's about $800 every month. That's what they are given as a corporate responsibility. So for me, it's not actually a corporate responsibility. This is just to wash down and to calm down the people, because the elderly may see this as a big money. But there's a government responsibility to make sure this corporate responsibility are actually not only just a peanut, but are actually things that are going to change the livelihood of people. But the government have not been involved when it comes to corporate responsibility for now.
Thank you so much. I have a question, and I'll see if any other person have a question before we conclude. You know, when you were talking, you talked about culture, and that was quite touching. And you talked about how, as a young person, when elders are the first to accept that the younger people are not then willing to disobey them because of this tradition of respecting your elders. And then you also talked about the historical practice of being asked to go to the sea to wash your body if you have a rash, but now this whole process has been disrupted. So it tells us that there is a historical, cultural connection to the ocean, that even when we're trying to quantify the impact of these conversations, we don't do it that often. So I wonder then whether you think there is a call within Gambia for people to rethink and reconnect with some of these cultural, historical connections that we had with the oceans. Since you're a Gambian, I'm asking, do you feel that there is this call for us to rethink and go back to our roots in terms of this cultural, spiritual relationship that we have with the oceans? I think you're muted. You muted
Mustafa, you're
yourself for
muted.
some reason.
Oh, sorry for that. I said that's a very important question. So I'm a Gambian Senegalese. My mother is from Senegal. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, so it's very sad to say that we are actually losing the culture. Not only losing the culture, there are families that are called Serere families and Walla families. These Serere families, they don't even send their kids to school. As early as 4 5 years, they start taking you to the sea. So all your life, what you know is just fishing. Imagine now you cannot fish because your livelihood have been taken away from you by industrial trawlers or by big fishing vessels that are fishing for this fish meal company. So you have to change everything. That is for the livelihood aspect of it. But let's talk about, our cultural cuisines. We talk about jollof rice. Also, is actually Benekin, and we said we have the best jollof rice in West Africa. But that competition, Gambia is going to lose that competition soon, because what
Yeah.
makes our jollof rice taste better is sardine, because it has this oily stuff. But now we are actually shifting, so we cannot use sardine for our jollof rice. We use frozen chickens. So it also affects our cultural diet. So like historically it affects us a lot. And beach have been not only used for washing, but it have been a sacred place for us. It have been a worshiping place for us. It have been like, people are giving miracle baths there. They go there and take like your water and shower yourself. But now that water cannot use for this purpose anymore. So culturally it has affected us, even spiritually, because people like to go there early morning to breathe, to pray, but they cannot do that anymore, because that water that they use to touch and that smell coming from the fish meal factory makes them not to use it. So cultural and traditional have been affected a lot, a lot, a lot.
All right, thank you so much for the response. I will want to ask LCA. Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, someone asked a question here. He
Oh,
said, Mustafa, how bad is corruption in this area?
okay. Yeah.
I wish I never said it, but it's as terrible as you can imagine. And this is not only in the Gambia. It's Senegal and the same thing Mauritania. 2018, I was doing an investigation and I went to Senegal, the Casamance part of Senegal, that had been purely traditional. There are people who told me, we cannot talk about this. I said, why? They said, there is a cause on it. If you talk about it, you're going to die. If you talk about it, you will never prosper in this community. If you talk about fish meal, you don't do that, because there are people that were getting money out of this. I have evidence. I have proofs. During Tobaskis, that are Muslim feast, during Ramadan, they give them all kind of gift. There are people that are receiving monthly salaries, and they are not even working there. In the Gambia, for example, a fish like any National Environment Agency inspector went to inspect a fish meal company. They released dog on him, and the dog actually bite him. But do you know what happened? Nothing come out of it. That's how powerful they are. During COVID-19, people were stopped from doing their business because they said there should be less crowd. But fish meal factory that generated a huge crowd were allowed to operate. Even when the Minister of Health have to send police intervention unit to close it down, the other ministry went there to open it. This is how bad it is. So individuals were actually benefiting while the country still faced the whole problem. That's why in my community, if you talk about it, they consider you as first anti-government, anti-Chinese, and like if I have a ceremony in my compound, there are elders that are not even talking to me. So imagine you have, as an investigator or as a journalist writing about this, because most of my focus is on fish meal. For the past 9 years, I focus on fish meal. People see me as anti-Chinese, anti-development, and that have affected me not only as a person, but affected my family. So now that is what you go to because of corruption. People are receiving money, people are receiving opportunities, and people are receiving bribe just to make sure they continue operating. So yes, corruption-wise, it's not only at the government level, but also within the community settings. So it's really a huge problem. And that's why fighting against fish meal or writing against fish meal can put your life at a very, very bad risk.
Okay, thank you so much, Mustafa. I have a final question for Stephanie. Sorry, not Stephanie, for Elsie, and then I'll leave Stephanie to conclude the session. How do you address the digital divide arising from the things you're talking about? Because obviously, beyond the need for capacity development and everything else, the fact remains that the technology we're talking about is mainly developed outside the African continent, mainly funded, mainly maintained, and everything related to it is not necessarily produced within the continent. So how can we address the digital divide, that the transformative nature or advancement of digital technological tools, as much as good as they might be, that is widening? How do we address it for the future, at least, given that your presentation focused on cybersecurity and how it relates to the maritime? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very poignant question, and I would like to go back to two things. But before then, I'm happy to see that Josephine is here. And the point, I go back to our publication we are working on, which we're hoping to publish very soon. And basically, the questions we pose in there is the issues of ownership of the technologies. Where does the technology come from? Or who, right? Where is it developed? Where does it sit? Who is able to not just collect the data, but control the data? Where does the data sit? And who is able to even see the data and manipulate the data? And we argue that these are questions that as Africans, as Ghanaians, as Gambians, as Senegalese, as Nigerians, we should constantly ask so that we growingly close that gap that you mentioned and grow our sovereignty and autonomy regarding the use of these technologies, because otherwise this gap is going to grow farther and farther and farther wider. And the second thing I want to go back to is the safe seas projects that we're working on. It might sound like I'm drumming it in a lot, but what we are doing is trying to give the states and the MMCCs autonomy after giving them training to use these technologies. And so we're giving sovereignty in the capacity, and then we hand over the technology to you so that it's all in your hands, 100%, no interference, no foreign manipulation, and it builds the confidence and the power and the sovereignty that a state or a region has. And I think more and more of this, one, from the region and from the lips of the region and the country themselves, advocating and asking for that whenever stakeholders, so-called interested stakeholders come to give us help and gifts, we need to ask these questions like, well, where is it from? Are we able to keep it and have our autonomy and say, this is the way we want to handle it as Ghanaians. This is how we want to handle it as the Navy. And you don't have any powers to take it from us or shut it down, or even if you supervise, we have the power that we need to be able to have autonomy over our waters and our communities. I think this is the way to go with our voices as locals, but also on the international level, stakeholders should prioritize the needs of local communities and states and regions as well.
All right, thank you so much. It looks like we have more questions. I don't know. So, Clement, you have a question, and then there's a question, Mustafa, on the chat that says, "I want to know what more can be done by both parties, given that there are compounding interests depending on who you talk to, and enlightening involving the community where these fish mills are operating, and see the long-term gratification or over short-term." Can you see the question? It's
Yes.
from, okay, yeah. Can you
Yeah,
quickly, and then
it's from
Clement?
Samuel. Thanks for joining, Samuel. So the whole issue is this is still like it doesn't pass, ratification. We can actually solve this mess happening. So what like the solution for me is there should be, a broader engagement, a collaboration, a more like a regional collaboration, because Gambia is too small to negotiate deals with China. Because most of these fish meal companies are actually Chinese companies, even though you have few Europeans like Spanish companies involved, but China have been leading it in the Gambia, Senegal, and Mauritania. And Gambia alone cannot discuss any fisheries agreement with China or any fisheries deal with China. So there should be more of like a regional collaboration to tackle this. And communities need to be at the center stage of every discussion that is happening. That's the only way I think we can solve this. But as long as communities are neglected, communities' ideas and thoughts are not involved, then it becomes a problem, because this community have been having what we call community conservation, traditional conservation for far too long. So those ideas need to be incorporated to make sure there is a lasting impact and also sustainability. Thank you.
May I add something quickly to Mustafa's intervention? And thank you, Samuel, for the question. And I go back to his point on, if it doesn't benefit the community, it doesn't benefit anyone. It doesn't make sense at all, because you can't jump the people it directly affects and prioritize, the next step or the third step. And whether long-term or short-term, is the people who have primarily guarded the sea, sat with it, lived there, built their lives and their memories over there. And this is very important, because these are the people who have been the custodians for over a long period of time. And so if you mention $5,000 when you are making over millions and it's not life-changing, it doesn't mean anything. And that's, again, why I believe it's the people who live along the coast and breathe the unfresh smells, that should keep our voices, louder and louder and louder all the time. Thank you very much.
And a very quick question, then Stephanie, you do your thing.
Can I ask my question?
Yes, Clement.
Oh, you have, okay. Yeah, I mean, brilliant presentations there. And I'm wondering though, when you say community, what how there's a sense in which you are making a claim, which is rightly so, that communities are quite homogeneous, and that when you say it is the community's voice and perspective that needs to be on the table, you are saying that community is quite a voice that can be harmonized, and that should be should be juxtaposed to global voices and global interests. But therein lies the complexity, because I think even within a single town or village, there are so many diverse perspectives that, often it is those contestations that also open vulnerabilities for external actors to build on, to jump on and make a case, and make their millions without really having any consequences. How do you factor that complexity in your conceptualization of a community, coastal communities? Also recognizing that external voices are not also just some common voice coming in. They also have their own interests and competing dimensions, which again become part of that very competitive global engagement. And so, yeah, I guess my point is for you to reflect on how you can harmonize that complexity in community.
Is that question for me?
Thank you very much. I think you can go and then I can continue after you, Mustafa. But thank you very much, Clement. This is very helpful to evince some other bits of the homogeneity of community. Sorry, heterogeneity and homogeneity.
Yeah. Homogeneity, yeah.
Yes,
Mustafa?
so I would say for the Gambian context or Senegalese context, I would say we have a like where these fish mills are very these are communities that have their traditional way of engaging in project discussions. So first is when the project is coming, there must be what we call impact and like a social, impact on social and environmental, issues in the community. What is going to bring there? So and the key component on that is that there must be engagement with the community. And during this engagement doesn't mean you have to link only, the hierarchy, the top hierarchy. But what we do with other projects is that we call a general meeting. We have our local bantabas. Our bantabas in English may be, a town hall meetings. So for us, we don't have a hall, but we have what we call a big tree. Under a big tree, we sit there and we discuss ideas. Different people, okay, some may say yes, they want it, others may say they don't want it. But all what happens is the government will say, if I want road to pass in the middle of your head, the road will pass there, and you cannot deny it. These are government favors projects. The government want to have it because they want to have, some kind of, kickbacks, or they want to bring, foreign investors. So yes, but we can say, okay, I have an experience. If the fish mill comes here, fish mill happen in Gunjur. It destroys Gunjur. What can we do to make sure that damage is limited? We have experts within the community in different fields that have worked for UN or that have worked for a big organization. So they all can come and share their ideas. So these ideas is what we're going to put on paper. Instead of meeting with only the elders that doesn't have the opportunity to go to school, but now they are going to meet with the communities, even with diverse voices, even with different ideas, even with different opinions regarding it. But at least what is going to be the central part is everybody will feel involved and everybody will feel to be part of. So that is what I'm talking when I said community engagement. So as long as people don't feel the ownership and people don't feel their voice have been contributed, then it becomes a whole issue. And that's the whole idea of fishmeal. It's very secrecy. You don't even the government officer, if you ask some of them, they will say we don't know anything about it. Even those that are responsible for enforcing or responsible for making sure that they operate within the law, they will say we don't have any idea when it comes to it. So that's when I said community participation or community involvement is key, because they need to be there and they need to make sure their voices are included in anything that have to be with their community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mustafa. I'll just add a bit to that, Clement, and thank you again. I think you're right. It's a point of reflection on the matter and every other matter that includes community issues. And like you said, the external stakeholders sometimes they come with a messiah approach, and it's not out of ill intent. However, they sometimes have far-reaching consequences. Sometimes and mostly because the community isn't represented properly, and also the community doesn't participate in the decision-making process properly. Now, looking at community as a concept, right? Yes, it's supposed to be homogeneous, but there are complexities that eventually bring to light differences in a community. However, speaking in the context of these maritime issues, we are looking at what communities face along the smile of the coast. So even in Ghana, looking from east to west, you will have most coastal communities facing IUU issues as a main prominent factor. However, at the east in Keta, Puti, and other Volta regional towns, they'll tell you, maybe mostly will tell you that the sea encroaching on their land and their communities is much more of a prevalent threat than light fishing, right? But when you inch westward, then you find people in Apam, in Elmina, in Dix Cove, complaining about, industrial fishers using light fishing. So in terms of the voice, I think it varies in the context of what you're speaking about. But if you're speaking about general maritime issues and IUU fishing and issues that threaten coastal environments, I think that in this case, it's safe to say that there is a chorus that coastal communities have vis-a-vis what external stakeholders are asking for. And like Mustafa said, engagement is very important. The representation and participation should be should take along the coastal communities, and having their voice, taking their voices and their experiences into cognizance is very important. But I would like to say definitely again, this is something that I didn't think about. So thank you for bringing it up. Okay.
All right. Stephanie, do you want to round off because we don't have much time? And then I want to ask the presenters if it's okay with you, can we share your PowerPoint? That's if you share with us. If it's not okay, do let us know later because some people have requested. Stephanie, is over for to you to conclude the session.
All right. So thank you to all the participants who have taken the time to join us and to our presenters who have really sparked off an interesting debate. I think we have walked through a whole curve in terms of the discussions that we've had. We've talked about a major problem in our fisheries industry, but we've also looked at unique opportunities to leverage technology and cooperation to tackle some of these critical security challenges that we face in the maritime sector that have implications for coastal communities. So thank you to our presenters for sparking of that debate. I just want to say that you can continue to stay engaged because I see there was even one more question in the chat. So continue to engage with us. This is the point of the webinar, to foster these engagements and dialogues on these critical issues that rest at the intersection of security and justice, and then the ocean space. You can follow us on our LinkedIn page, which is Just SeaCurity Dialogues. The security, as you can see down there, from my name here is SEA, so Just SeaCurity Dialogues. And then you can inform others within your network to connect with us as well and to participate in future webinars. And if you are interested in engaging with us further or would like to share a presentation or your research at future webinars that we have, you can send us an email as well. I've put that briefly on the screen. Just express your interest by sharing an abstract and a brief bio, and we'll be in touch to see if you can share your insights at future webinars. We look forward to seeing you all during the next session, and thank you once again for participating. Have a lovely day.
Thank you very much all. Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye. Bye bye. Good job. Good job.